concept called as, right, exceptions handling, right? So one of the most important concept of object oriented Java, right? Exception handling, right? So here, this is what. So I can say, it's not writing a program; it's also writing some kind of supporting logic whenever your program fails, right? So how to write this kind of supporting logic and all we try to understand here. Before moving on to this, what actually the meaning of exceptions and how these exceptions occurs, what happens when the exception occurs in a program. Then we try to understand how to handle these exceptions when they occur in the program, right? So, like if you take a product, again, we try to understand by using a product. If you take a product, in a lifetime of a product can fail due to any reason, right? So if I take a bike here, if I take a bike kind of product, so it may fail due to any reason, right? So there may be lots of reasons where the bike cannot move properly, right? So you cannot say what is the reason and all. So while you write the program, it is always something your program may also fail due to some reasons here. Right? Let us try to see some kind of reasons here and what happens when such kind of things happens to your program. What your Java is going to do, how Java is going to help you to solve such kind of problems and all, right? So generally these exceptions are nothing but in general we can say some kind of errors, right, which may occur while your program is under execution, right, which may occur while your program is under execution, right? So we'll try to see some kind of problems here, what happens here, before moving on to see actual what is the exception and all. So as a programmer, whenever you write, nobody can write a perfect program in single shot, right? So you will come across different types of errors. So right, so we'll come across errors like syntactical errors, syntax errors, right? These errors will be identified at the time compiler is going to identify these things at the time of compiling your program. That means generally, whenever you have the grammatical mistakes in your program, so like violating the grammar of a particular language and not following the grammar which to be followed as a programmer. If you don't follow the grammar, every program should be written inside a class and it should have an open and close, every statement should be terminated by using a semicolon, right? Reserved words, lots of rules you have. I think you know these rules till now, right? So if you are not following the syntactical rules which are given with a language, then you will get what, these kind of syntax errors, and these will be filtered at a compiler. Compiler is going to catch all these things and it is going to show the errors, right? If you don't solve these errors, your program cannot continue, you cannot execute the program, right? Then you can come across different errors like syntax errors, in the same way semantic errors, right? And you will come across logical errors. I can say logical errors are those right? So before starting a program, as a programmer, before starting a program, generally we'll have some kind of expectations what my program should return, what my program after completion of my program, what should it return, right? So let's suppose I would like to print the values from 1 to 10, then so that that is your view. Based on that we will be writing a programming logic, so it starts printing 1 to 10 R. You cannot guarantee that until you see the output. You cannot guarantee is it correct or not, your program behaving incorrectly or not, right? So if your program, so whatever the output after executing your program, if it is not matching with the expected output, whatever you are expecting, and whatever the result which is given after executing your program, if we both are not matching, then there is a problem with your logic. Right, let's suppose I would like to print 1 to 10, but it's not printing 1 to 10, it is printing some other numbers. So there is a problem with your logical error, and it is made purely because of your logical mistake. So these things need to be rectified by the programmer. There is no option left for the programmer. But still, when your program is under execution, there may be some kind of errors may rise there. Such kind of errors we call as exceptions. What still such kind of errors which we may get while executing the program, right? So those are called as what, exceptions, purely they are runtime errors. So I say, right, there are two types of runtime errors. You can get logical mistakes. Yes, there is no option as a logical mistake when you write your logic wrong. So definitely the output which is given is obviously wrong. So the second type of errors we will get at runtime, right? So these errors we call as exceptions. What actually this exception? What is the meaning of this exception? Right, so we try to understand by taking one or two examples, right? So exception can be anything. Generally you can do it like define it like it is an unexpected or unwanted situation. So exception is nothing but what? It is an unexpected and unwanted situation which occurs in a program. So what does it mean here? What is the meaning of unexpected or unwanted situation which occurs in a program? And which, when it happens, when the exception occurs in a program, your program will be terminated abnormally. Let's see, but let's try to understand. So what actually is going to happen here? Now, let's see here. Now I'm trying to write a Java program. Assume that I'm trying to write a Java program where through my program, right? I'm going to read a file. There is a text file. Let us assume that there is a text file, and from this text file I'm going to read some text, right? Right, so some code is there in this text file. I'm going to read or write something I'm going to do onto this text file. Or I have designed a Java program where my program is going to interact with a database, right? Let's suppose I have written a Java program through which I want to interact with the database software to perform some kind of persistence operations, right? So it's fine here. So this is a database software. Okay, fine. So we can write, we'll see how to write this database code and all while we learn the JDBC. Just example I'm giving here. Now it's fine here. Okay, it is a database. Assume that. Oh, great. Still I don't know how to draw this. Fine. Assume this is a database software you have, and so let's see here. When I have written my program to read a file or to read from a file, right? So what happens here? So I have written a nice program which reads the content from a file and all. Now when I have written my program, so when I have written my program, and that file was present in the hard disk, and my program is my program is reading very fine, or my program is writing very fine to that file. It's fine. When I have written and when I have tested it, my program was working very fine, right? Let's suppose after later point of time, when I'm trying to execute my program, if this file which I'm trying to read is deleted from the memory, right? When I have written my program, the file was there and it is working fine. But after some time, when I've started again using my program, and again I'm trying to read my program, unexpectedly, due to some reason, the file was deleted from the disk and my program still trying to read this file. What happens to my program? Or at the same time, my program, through my program, I'm trying to interact with the database software. Everything is fine. My program is fine. Database software is fine, right? The software is, both softwares are fine. My Java software is working fine, and my program is fine, and my database software is fine. But there is a network issue. So I'm trying to connect to a database over a network, and there is no network to connect to the database. Then what happens to my program? Right? So here, there's not a problem with your program. Or I'm trying to take some inputs from end user. So I'm trying to take some inputs from end user, right? So where I'm expecting some kind of inputs from end user, and the end user is not he's not giving some expected inputs whatever my program is expecting. So some different kind of inputs, some wrong inputs he is trying to give to my program. So if he is giving a wrong input, what happens to my program? Right? You are trying to follow me, right? So let's take this basic example here. So I have written a program. It's very fine working when I have written, and that's example like I'm trying to read from a file where wait, when I have written my program, it's working fine, and after some time again I'm trying to run my program and it's not working fine. Because of what? Is this program problem? That may be the program problem, or that may be some external resources problem also. You cannot say that. The file is there, it's fine. If the file is not there, you cannot guarantee. That doesn't mean that your program is always fails. Your program will always fails, right? So it may fail, it may not fail. You cannot guarantee the situation, right? So if you take up a simple conversation in between you and your friend over a mobile, so you are trying to call your friend, right, to his mobile. So do you guarantee that always you will be making a call to him? Always it is you can connect to your friend, though your mobile is correct, though your mobile is working fine and your friend mobile is working fine. There may be lots of reasons where you cannot make a communication with your friend. There may be a network failure. There may be the friend mobile is out of coverage area. So what you should do in all these cases? What happens here? Let's suppose if I take these scenarios here, right? What happens in all these scenarios? Let's suppose whenever you are traveling from one location to other location on your own vehicle, right? So let's suppose you want to journey like 600, 500, 600 kilometers on your own vehicle. What you do? You directly start the journey, right? So you cannot say in the middle what happens. So before starting your journey, definitely you will be having some kind of you will be having some kind of alternate arrangements if something goes wrong in the middle. So you will be making all arrangements to rectify that scenario. Let's suppose you will be carrying extra tire. If something goes wrong, if one tire fails in the middle, then you will be fixing that problem by using the extra tire, right? So the same thing may happen in the program. So you cannot guarantee that your program may fail due to what reason. It may fail due to its internal code problem, or it may fail due to some external problems. Absolutely you cannot guarantee, right? So if that is a situation happens, the most common situation, the most common things whenever you try to read the data from external resources, like whenever you try to connect to some external resources, there you will face the problems. As I told you, reading from a file or writing to a file, everything is fine. Your file is there and Java program is also working fine, but the Java program is unable to read the file. Then what happens to your program, whatever the program you have written? Your software is corrupted, your database software is not working fine, it is not working, everything is fine, but the database software is corrupted. So what happens to your program, right? So because this is the program which actually is trying to this is the one which is trying to read from some external resources, or which is trying to take the inputs from end users, and which is going to process the end users data. And if something goes wrong in between, right, let's suppose I have written 10 lines of code here, and I have written 10 lines of code. In between these 10 lines of code, there is a fifth line which is caused me the problem. There are totally 10 lines of 10 lines of code is there in my program, and the fifth line which is trying to interact with a file, or trying to read a file. If this statement is not properly executed, so what happens to the rest of the code, and what actually the Java is going to do for you? If the file is not there, whatever the file you are trying to read, if the file is not there, how the Java software is going to help you in this case, right? So what should I do in this case? What should I do as a programmer? Obviously the software cannot help you to solve that problem. So what should I do as a programmer in such kind of situations? Alright. So these kind of situations, whatever the examples I have given, all these are the things which may occur unexpectedly. Definitely you cannot say this kind of situation may occur. You cannot guarantee that this always will happen to you. No. Your program, when you run your program 100 times, 99 times may execute fine, but it may fail one time. If it fails one time, so how should I rectify that failure situation? and you will not know. That is the biggest problem. As a programmer, you will not know whether this problem will be raised in your program or it may not raised. Definitely you cannot guarantee that, right? So everything is fine with your logic. Everything is fine with your logic, but still it is fine. You have written very nicely, but still it's fine. But due to some reason, it may not work sometimes, right? So how can I solve this problem, right? So this is what an exception means. Always occurs at runtime. An exception is runtime error. Exception is what? A runtime error, which always occurs when your program is under execution, right? So in general, you can define like this: an exception is an unwanted, unexpected situation, which occurs at, right, which occurs at the time of your program is execution, which occurs at runtime of your program. And what should I do as a programmer when this kind of exception occurs at runtime, right? So before that, what should I do and all? Before that, we try to understand what happens such kind of exceptions occurs in a program. We try to see one or two examples. What happens? What Java is going to do for you when such kind of programs, when such kind of unexpected events occurs in your program, right? So let me write some simple program, right, so that we see what Java is going to do for you and what as a programmer you can do for this, right? So for this, I am going to take one simple example here. Public class, right? A Java program I am going to write here. Exception demo, right? And I'm going to write some main method, nothing very simple here. Static void main. Again, very regular Java code I'm going to write here. String args, right? Now I'm going to write a simple system.out.println. First of all, when my main starts executing, so I'm going to, I'm just writing one simple system.println so that I can trace my program, right? This is one way of tracing a program by putting system.out.println main start, right? And I'm going to have one more statement in the end of main, right? So when my main method ends here, I'm going to write one more statement here. Oh, I did not copy it. Fine. Oh, what is the problem? Where is my cursor? Fine, but it's fine now. I've just copied it, so I'm going to change this statement from main start to main end, right? Now this is where the main method starts and main method ends. It's fine. Very simple statement. Let me say my program with the exception demo data Java here. Alright, so let me run this program. It's fine actually. There nothing happens to that program. It will execute fine. It's fine. Let me run my program with the exception demo.java. Yep, it's fine. Good. And it will print you the output. Just I'm testing. I have a doubt that whether it is states whether it's saved with the Java text file. Right. Now, so now see here, I'm going to write one simple statement here inside this. Now this statement is like this: int I is equal. Let's suppose I'm going to take the inputs from a user, where the input is given like this, where he has given the input like this, right? Now what happens to my program? And you know that it's not possible that you cannot divide something by 0, right? So what would be the solution for this? What Java is going to do for you when such kind of situation occurs here, right? Now you can see here, it's clearly started executing your program, and you can see the main is started here, and before completing your execution, now Java is not completed its program execution completely. Java is not completely executed this program because of it is stopped the program in the middle and saying that, boss, I cannot execute your program because of I cannot execute one statement in your program. So I don't know what is the result of something by zero. Don't know what is the result of what something by zero. So that what happened here, Java program is terminated abnormally. So this is what here. So the Java people, right, does not know how to solve this statement, how to execute this statement. The Java software, I can say, right? So the Java software does not know how to execute this statement and what would be the result of this statement. So what it does to you, it abnormally terminated your program. That's the first problem. See here, your program is not executed right properly, and it is not executing the rest of the code also. There are two problems here. Two major problems. The program is terminated abnormally without executing completely. Right? So I can see only main start here. You can see only main start, but you cannot see a main end. It is not terminated abnormally. The program is not terminated properly. It is terminated abnormally as well. The all statements of my program are not executed. This is not executed. It is terminated your program from the middle itself. So what happens to the rest of the code? Definitely it is not going to execute. Right? Now let me write some statement here, some method I'm going to add to my class, so that with this method we try to understand what's still more. I'm going to add a static method so that I can call it directly from main method. Public static void method 1. My method name is method 1 here, and so I'm going to copy the same here from the main. Copy the same thing to the method when I'm not going to do anything here. Simple. Just I would like to change the statements here, printing statements, so that I can clearly observe my program flow. Method 1 start and method 1 end. Right? Method 1 end. So from main method I would like to call what? Method 1. I'm trying to call the method 1 from main method. So because both are static methods, you can directly call a static method of a class from other static method. Right? So you can directly call a static method of a class from other static method directly. Simple program here. So main method starts. Once it started, immediately the method call goes to what? Method 1, and it starts executing. Then let's see what happens to the program. Alright, now I'm compiling this program and I'm executing this program. See here, the same problem is occurred. Main is started, method 1 is started, but no method is completed its execution. The program is terminated in the middle abnormally. And you can see there is no statement where like method 1 end or method main is end. Definitely there is no statement which shows you the ending statements are not there. This statement is missing as well as this main statement is missing. That means what happened to your program? Your program is terminated abnormally and the code is not executed. Right? So let's see, let me add one more method so that we'll try to understand much of this. Right? So this is one more static method again, so that I can call the methods very easily. Method 2, and from the method 1 I'm going to call method 2. Static method of a class. It's the same fundamental rule we have, right? And just I'm using that rule to call the methods. So that let me delete this right lines so that you can see the entire program. Fine, this is my entire program. Nothing is there. This simple flow you have. From main it is going to call method 1, from method 1 it is going to call method 2. The meaning is there why I am writing these statements. Right? Now just simple modification to my program. I have added one extra static method to this program. Now let me compile and execute my program so that we'll try to understand what again is going to do for me. Right. Oh. Oh, sorry, it is recursion. It's recursion. Method 1 is itself is calling. Right, and again it is exception, right? Very interesting. It is a recursion and it is again an exception. Right. So let me compile my program and let me run my program, right? So that we see this, what is going to happen here. So now I think my program is properly written, right? Exception demo.java, it's fine compiled. Now I'm going to execute my program. See that program output, what is the program output is. What is that program output is. See this? So if you follow the flow of my program, so main is started. It is immediately calling the method 1. This is the statement which is calling the method 1. And it goes to the method 1. From this the control jumps from method 1 to method 2 and it is started executing. But before executing this end statement, in the middle you have a statement which is cannot be executed by the Java runtime. Java runtime cannot execute this statement because it does not know what is the value of 10 by 0. So what Java runtime has did for me? So because it cannot execute this statement, so it is stop my program execution when such kind of statement is occurred, and it is terminated the program abnormally, and the code which is there after the statement is not executed. So the statement is not executed absolutely, and because of this method is called from this method after the statement what is there, this is also not executed because this method is called from this. Whatever the statement you have after that method call is not also executed. So you can see this output clearly, right? So it is only you can see all start statements, but you cannot see any end statements here. So that is what Java runtime is going to do for you. Assume that these two inputs I am taking from the end user. Just directly I am writing to explain easily. Assume that I am taking these two inputs from the end user, and you cannot guarantee what kind of input end user is going to your program to give your program. 99 times the end users may give correct input, but there is always a possibility of 1% of possibility that some end user may give 0 as input to your method. So that what happens to your program? Absolutely, this program will terminate abnormally. So what I'm going to do here? How should I handle this situation? So there is one scenario where your program may fail, and if that situation occurs, how can I handle this program? That is where the exception handling is, right? So exception is nothing but an unwanted or unexpected scenario which occurs while executing your program, and when this exception is occurred at your program, that Java runtime is going to terminate your program abnormally, and it stops the execution of the rest of the code. It will not execute the rest of the code. The program will be terminated abnormally and the rest of the code will not be executed for you. Right? So handling such kind of, so imagining before writing a program, so you need to imagine such kind of scenarios and you need to have a mechanism to handle such kind of scenarios. What is the meaning of handling the exception here? What is the meaning of handling the situation here? Are we going to rectify the scenario? No. It's not rectifying the scenario, but it is having an alternate logic. It is having absolutely an alternate logic, right? When something goes wrong, when my program fails to read from a text file, which is there in some, let's suppose, which is there in some network location. So try to read a text file from some other location. If this file is not there, try to read some text file from some other location. Right? If this database fails, try to connect to some temporary database, some local database. So writing such kind of alternate logics, not rectifying the scenario, right? So handling such kind of errors temporarily. is called as what? Exceptions handling, right? So that is the meaning of exception handling here. So having the alternate logic, when such kind of things happens in your program, analyzing such kind of things and having some alternate logic to solve that particular problem, not solving, to having some kind of alternate logic to rectify that scenario is called as what? Exceptions. The same thing. So as I take in the example, right? So when you go, when you travel from one location to other location, you are traveling to far distance. Definitely will have all the alternates, and you don't know whether happens what happens in the middle. It may, your journey may, if you don't have extra tire, and in the middle if something goes wrong, if something happens to your vehicle, definitely your journey will stop, right? Such kind of thing here, the same thing here. If you are making a call to your friend and network is not available, so you will try to you need to find some kind of alternate to make a call. You reach by a mail, do something here so that you can continue with your flow, right? So this is what here the meaning of exception. So there are lots of scenarios where your program may stop abnormally. Lots of scenarios. It may be due to internal problem of your program logic, or it may be some external problem of some resources where your program is trying to read, right? So here try to see this, right? So first of all, what is happened here, try to see clearly here. This is a very important output you can see here. What happens when the exception is occurred? So, and as a programmer, if you are failed to handle it, exception is occurred, and as a programmer I'm failed to handle it. So what happens here? So as I told you, Java runtime is going to stop your program execution abnormally, right? And it is going to throw you some kind of a message. The Java runtime stops your program execution and it throws you some kind of a message. Now if you clearly see this message here, so this is called as a stack of message. It's a stack here. Whatever the output you are seeing, this is a stack, Java stack, right? If you clearly see the stack, it is clearly showing you, right? So at what line the error is occurred, right? So it clearly showing you at what line the error is occurred. Now always Java methods will be put onto stacks. Whatever the Java methods you have, whatever the methods calls will be there, all methods will be put onto stack here, and the stack looks like this. The first method always goes into the stack is what? Very important discussion. The same discussion will come in, we'll see in multi-threading, right? The first method which goes into the stack is what? So Java method calls are stack based approach here. The first method which goes into the stack in my program, right, is main method, which starts executing. The first method is main, so it starts executing. Then from the main, in the middle, from the middle statement, from the middle of main, I'm trying to call what? I'm trying to call one more method called as what? Method 1. From the middle of main, I'm trying to call a method, and this method is method 1, and it goes to the stack on top of main, right? And from there, I'm trying to call one more method, which is method 2, which is on top of what? Method 1. So this is the stack, and in your stack, there is a problem. In the stack, there is a problem in the code in this method. This is a method which has a problem statement, right? This is a method which has a problem statement. And what happens here? Now your Java runtime, the Java runtime is going to search for whether a programmer has provided any alternate or not for that problem. No, any alternate, there is no alternate is provided by the programmer for this problem. So there is no alternate which is provided for this problem by the Java programmer. So what it is going to do here is, Java runtime is going to forcibly remove this method from the stack. It forcibly removes this method from the stack, and it checks. It moves down to the stack. So stack is, as you know, that what is it? Stack means last in first out approach, right? The last method which is entered into the stack is method 2, because this method has a problem and it is not handled by the programmer. This method will be removed from the stack. And Java will not going to stop your program execution from there only. It checks its calling method here it checks here whether the programmer has provided an alternate for that handle the exception or not. No, in my program I did not handle the exception in this method also, right? So it will again forcibly remove this method from the stack, right? So when this main method 2 is removed from the stack, it removes the method from the stack after executing the statement, right? This is the statement which is from which this is the problem statement which is caused my exception, which caused the exception for me, and your method will be deleted. It searches whether the programmer has handled this method or not. No, the programmer has not handled the method. So it removes this method from the stack, and whatever the code you have after this exception statement, this statement will not be executed for you. Whatever the code you have after the exception statement, this statement will not be executed for you, right? This statement will not be executed for you. Again it goes to the caller. Who is the caller of this method? So this is the statement which is calling this method. It goes up to it goes to this method, and here also there is no exception handling logic. So what the Java runtime is going to do here, it is also forcibly remove this method from the stack with not executing the rest of the code of this method. Again it comes to this method in the stack, right? And here it is also searches for the handling logic, but it is not there. There is no exception handling logic in this method also. What it is going to do here, entire stack will be discarded. Entire stack will be discarded because without executing the code, without executing the complete code, the entire stack will be discarded because it did not write any exception handling logic for this. So part of the method 2 is executed, part of the method 1 is executed, and part of the main is executed. The statements which are above the exception logic are executed, but the statements which are next to the exception are not executed. And your Java runtime is deleting all these methods from the stack, and it is going to throw you an error. It is going to throw you a runtime error saying what? So this runtime error is nothing but exception and saying the same error problem. See here, if you see the stack here, the first method which is in the stack is what? Main method, right? The bottom. Then it is trying to call 17th line of main method is trying to call method 1, right? From the 5th line of method 1, right? So from the 5th line of Java code, actually not method 1, from the 5th line of Java code it is trying to call a method 2, and there is a problem in method 2, so that there is no handling mechanism. This method 2 is deleted, method 1 is deleted, main is deleted, nowhere you handle the exception, and it is showing you the problem and a message here. So right, so what it is happens here, so when exception is raised in your program, and which is not handled by the programmer, so it is handled by the Java runtime. And when the exception is handled by the Java runtime, what Java runtime is going to do here, it is going to throw you the stack where the problem is occurred, and what is the type of problem. It is going to give you some kind of message here. So this message contains 3 different things here. What are the 3 different things you will have in this message, right? So the Java runtime is going to show you that error message with 3 different things here. So it is location, it is going to find out the location, what is the location where this exception is occurred, and it is going to display you the type of the problem, and the third one is a message, and this message is what? A optional message. What is this here? It's not compulsory, this is optional, right? So it is going to display you these 3 things. Location means what? So where is the problem occurred, right? So where is the actual problem occurred, right? And where is the problem occurred, and what is the type of the problem, and what? Some optional message, user friendly message I can say for easy understanding, and this is optional. So if we see this, all these 3 things are there with my exception also, which is raised by the Java. So this is the where is the location. What is the location here? 17th line of a program called as Java exception demo. In the 17th line of exception demo, there is a problem, and this 17th line is calling the 5th line of the exception demo program, and this 5th line is calling 11th line of what? exception demo, and the method calls are like this: main, method 1, method 2. This is the location, right? And due to this problem, what is the problem here? What is the problem here? Arithmetic exception is the problem. This is the type. This is the problem type. Arithmetic exception is the problem type, right? And what is this here? Is a message. But you are trying to divide some number by 0, but I don't know how to, what is the result of something by 0, so that I cannot execute this statement and I don't know the value, so that I cannot continue this program execution. I cannot continue with the rest of the program because I cannot execute this statement successfully. And it is stopping your program at this particular line, and it is throwing you an exception message. And this exception message contains what? 3 different things here, right? So it always shows you the problem occurred location and the type of the problem, and this message may be optional, right? So this is what happens when the exception is raised in the program and you did not handle this exception. Did not handle this exception, right? So there are different types of exceptions. Most common exceptions are there. Let me change this to what? I'm removing the static here, so that I'm making them as what? Instance methods. So if you have an instance method, always instance method should be called with the object of the class, right? Instance methods should be called with the object of the class, so that I'm creating a object for my class. Exception demo, some ed is a reference only, but I'm not creating any object to this. But through this reference, I'm trying to call this method. Through this reference, I'm trying to call this method. What happens here if I call like this? There is no object is created, but through this reference, I'm trying to call this method, right? So let me run this program here. It's the most common occurred problem. Only main start, because so Java runtime is unable to execute your program because you are trying to call a method. Absolutely fine, boss. Which is fine to call a method from a class, but if you want to call a instance method of a class, you require a object, and it did not create an object. It is only a reference. It is not having any object to this, and the program is immediately stopped here because it cannot continue further. Java cannot call this method one. So it is stopped here and showing you the message saying what? 18th line of your program is having a problem, and this problem is of type null pointer exception. Null pointer means what? Through which pointer, whatever you are trying to call, it is not actually pointing to anything. Ed is acts like a pointer to a object, reference to a object, but it is not having any reference. It is not pointing to any object. It is simply null. Through this null, you are trying to call something. I cannot call it. It's simply saying what? I cannot call this method because this ed is not having any memory allocated, any object reference by this ed. Right? So what Java is going to do for you now? It cannot help you in this situation. Definitely it cannot call that method. So simply it is terminating your program, but not executing the rest of the code and showing the problem location and its type. What is the problem? Actually, why Java cannot continue this program execution? What problem it caused it to stop this program execution? This is the problem. In the previous situation, you have some different problem, and in this case, you have some different problem. Okay, are you following me? What I'm trying to say here? And in both cases, your program is terminated abnormally without completion. Now, as a programmer, I need to have some kind of alternate. So that writing an alternate means what? First thing is writing, handling this situation means what? I'm going to write an alternate, and writing alternate is nothing but I want my program to successfully complete without terminating the middle, and I want my complete program to execute. Right? So what is the meaning of writing an alternate for this? I don't want my program to terminate in the middle like this. I want my program to execute completely, right? Without abnormal termination, my program should be terminate smoothly. As well, all my program statements should execute without fail. So that is what I want to do. That is the meaning of what? Handling an exception. right? So are you following me what I'm trying to explain here? What is this happens, what is this concept is important, why this concept is important? As a programmer you cannot know, definitely you cannot know when your program fails. Absolutely it is not there in your hand, right? So definitely you need to have some kind of alternate, so that you should write some kind of logic where your program can run. If that problem occurs to your program also, your program should run by some kind of alternate, right? Yes or no? Always this is what we are going to do. And these kind of problems are not there in your hand. You cannot say this. You cannot, you will not know when this is going to occur in your program. Definitely no. Something you can rectify, but some things you cannot. So definitely you need to have some kind of logic here. So that handling this logic is called as what? Exception handling, right? So here, so how to handle these exceptions and all we try to understand, right? Are you following me what I'm trying to explain here? Is there any questions related to this? The one important concept. It's not only theoretically important, it is also important in development environments. Definitely it is important. Having alternate logic for your main logic. Whatever, it's not always that you will write your main logic and leave your program. Definitely no. Absolutely, if your logic fails, if there is any scenario where your logic fails, definitely you need to have some kind of alternate for that logic. Right? Now that is what here, writing the alternate for this code is called as what? Exception handling. Right? Right? So here, so before writing the alternates, what we can do and all, how to right? So what should I do as a programmer now, so that I can come out from this kind of problems here, right? So before moving on to this, so it's not always that Java people, right? So whatever the developers of the software, right, they have determined some kind of very commonly occurred problems here, and they have defined some kind of things here, right? So before moving on to how to handle the situations and all, so let us try to understand what actually technical meaning of exceptions and all, right? And very interesting here is, whatever the exceptions I keep on saying, right, they are nothing different here. They are again objects. Exceptions are nothing but what? Objects. They are classes and objects only, right? So what does it mean? What I'm telling here, right? So if you see here, there are two different examples I have explained here, right? So one is a null pointer exception, one is a arithmetic exception. So Java people, what Java people has did here is, whenever such kind of problems occurs, see here, this is the statement where the Java runtime cannot execute, cannot cannot calculate the result for this. Absolutely no. And this method cannot be called because of there is no object. It's absolutely not possible for a runtime to call this method. So like this, such kind of some kind of standard mistakes, where general mistakes, where every programmer is going to do, and where there is no solution for these kind of problems, right? So what they did is, Java people has identified such kind of problems, very commonly occurred problems. Let's see here. I'm going to I'm going to write one more problem here, right? So here, very simple here. I'm I'm trying to get the value from string array. I think I have explained this command line arguments. Did I explain command line arguments to you? Command line arguments. No? Fine, no problem. Okay. Now I am creating array here. I am creating integer array. Very common again problem which every programmer is going to do. I am trying to create an array here with some data. Right? Now this is my array. Now if I want to access this data from array, this object, right? Arrays are Java objects. I'm trying to just access the data from an array, and if we know that if you want to access the data from an array, we use the indexes. We use the name of the array, right? Identifier, and we use the index positions. Now what is the index positions here? As we know that index starts with 0 to n-1. Now I'm trying to do this. Let me comment all the statements here. So rest of the code will not be executed for me now, right? Oh, fine. So very simple. I just commented here. So I have created array, and rest of the code I have commented. Nothing. I'm trying to access the value from an array. It's fine compiled. So you are able to see the value and your program is terminated fine. But now here I'm going to write some value inside this 10. What happens here? So what is the meaning of this? I'm trying to get the value from an array called as I and from the index position 10. Is it really there, the index position 10? No. There is no index position called as 10. Then what Java is going, runtime is going to do for you? What value it is going to get for you? What value it is going to get for you if there is no index found? No way. It cannot help you to get the value, to read the value from 10th index. Right? Like this, yesterday we have seen when I am trying to convert an integer from a string format to an integer format, number format exception. Right? If the main method is not there in your program, you are trying to run your program, Java runtime always searches for a main method. If the main method is not there in the program, how it starts, from where it starts the program execution, and what it is going to do for you. Right? Such kind of things here. There are some statements as a programmer when you write these statements, and Java runtime cannot execute those statements. It's not possible for Java runtime to execute these statements. Now for each and every statement which Java runtime cannot execute, for each and every statement where Java runtime cannot execute, they try to identify like these lots of scenarios are there, right? So one scenario, you have say 3 scenarios I have shown you. One is, right, arithmetic exception. One is array index out of bound. One is arithmetic array index out of bounds exception. One is null pointer exception, right? The other one is right, arithmetic exception. What these people has done here, these people has created the objects for each and every scenario. For representing each and every scenario, they have created a class. They have created one class for each and every scenario to represent it. This is a different scenario you have, right? See this. What are these things? Can you read this? Have you ever come across this kind of thing here? Java.lang. Java.lang here. You have a Java.lang here, and you have a Java.lang here. What does this mean? What does this mean here? I'm saying this is a type. I said this is a type. What does it mean? Right? It's not a different thing here. So right, see, as yesterday we have discussed, this is a package. Java.lang is a package where we have discussed wrapper classes, string class, object class, system class. We have seen some classes from this package. In the same way, this is a package, and what is this? Array index out of bounds exception. This is an class. This is a class. This is a class. Null pointer exception. This is a class. Arithmetic exception. All are classes here. Classes from what? Lang package. It's not always the classes will be there in the lang package. Don't take that statement. Few classes are there inside lang package, few classes will be there in some other packages. But the point here is every exception, that means what? Whatever the statement which is unable to execute by a Java runtime, which is unable to execute it by Java runtime, to represent this situation, to represent this condition, Java people has, right, created one class, right? So for this problem, when something by 0, when Java runtime is going to calculate something by 0, but it is not, cannot do it. So what they did here, to represent this situation, they have created one class, arithmetic exception, right? So when somebody is trying to call a method without an object, now they have represented the situation by using one class. That class is what? Null pointer exception. These are all classes. When somebody is trying to get the data from an array, but where there is no index found, so what Java people has did here, they have represented that problem with a class called as array index out of bounds. For each and every problem, very commonly occurred problem, there are a huge number of problems are there. For each and every problem, what may occur inside a program, Java people has created a class for each and every problem. So 0 divided by 0, like by 0, something by 0 will be represented with a one class, right? You are trying to read the data from an array where the index is not found, this problem is represented by one class. You are trying to call a method where the object is not created, they have created one class to represent this problem. You are trying to convert a string to a number where actually Java cannot do it for you, they represent this problem by using number format exception, right? So each and every different problem, they have created one class. So what they do here, what Java runtime is going to do for you, right? Now try to understand this situation, right? What actually the Java runtime did for you internally, right? New exception demo, I'm creating an object for my class so that I can call that method. Now here, see this. So carefully observe, this is a very important thing to understand for solving bot exceptions, right? Now here, when I'm trying to execute my program starts from here. Object is created, absolutely fine. It calls the method 1 calls method 2. In the method 2, this statement causes you the problem that we have seen. Since beginning of this class, we will be seeing this statement is causing you the problem, right? Now what Java runtime is going to do in this situation, right? Now see this. Now it is caused the problem here. Now when I'm running my program, so what Java runtime has did here is, so because this problem is something by 0, to represent this problem, they have created one class. To represent this problem, they have created one class, and this always the class will be, when something by 0, always the class which represents that problem is arithmetic exception. So what Java people has did here is, when such kind of statement is executed and where they cannot, when such kind of statement is there in your program where they cannot execute it, they create one object for this. So to represent this problem, Java people create one object, right? So what is this object? This object is created for a class called as, what? Arithmetic exception, right? So they will create one object for this to represent this scenario, and this object will be created for a class called as what? Arithmetic exception, right? Are you following me? Now when I am trying to call a method without an object, what Java people has did here, what they do here, when I am trying to call a method without creating an object, what happens here in this case, right? Because this is a different problem, right? So to represent this problem, there is one class is created, and this class is what? Null pointer exception, and Java people has at this statement they have created. So this program, the Java runtime, right? Java runtime has created one object for this, and this object is called as what? This object is created for a class called as what? Null pointer exception. This object in this situation, the object is created for a class called as arithmetic exception, where the statement is under execution, and this object is created for a class called as what? Null pointer exception. Again the same story, object orientation, as I told you. Nothing different here. So like this, Java people has identified some different scenarios where your program may fail, and when that statement is occurred in your program, so what they did is they have created the object for they will create the runtime. They means what? The runtime will create the object for this situation, and it searches for the logic to handle this particular object actually. That is the meaning of what? Exception handling. So technically speaking, exceptions are objects only, and each there are different objects created for different classes in different scenarios, right? So as we have seen, 10 by 0 represented with some different object, some method is called without object, some different object, some trying to get the data from array where there is no index, some different objects. Like this, the statements which cannot be executed by the Java runtime to represent this scenario, they are creating for each and every scenario they are creating the objects, and these objects belongs to different types. Types are nothing but classes, and handling these objects is nothing but what? Exception handling. Getting me? What I'm trying to say? Yes, are you following me? It's a very important thing. Like this, there are a huge number of objects are there. There are huge number of scenarios you come across in Java, right? And Java developers has identified such kind of scenarios, and they have created the objects. They have identified these scenarios, and they are creating the objects for you. Not only this, as a programmer, whenever you are developing your application, right? So not only these predefined things, predefined exceptions, right? As a programmer, we can also write our own exceptions. Definitely, it is not possible that it's not possible the programmers who created the Java software, they cannot write the codes for all possible scenarios which may cause your program to terminate abnormally. There may be some other scenarios which may causes your program to stop, which are not identified by the Java people. Still, you can write such kind of your own exceptions, and whenever that situation occurs, you can throw them, right? So these are the very common exceptions which are occurred in very regularly with every programmer, happens with every programmer. So Java people has identified it. Not that all are identified by the Java people and they have given the objects for you. No, it's not correct. So you can also create your own objects, and you can also write your own classes for your own scenarios, and you can also write the code for them, right? So this is what you have here. So handling these objects. So here simply I can say, to representing each and every situation, one object is created and it is thrown out. And as a programmer, I need to handle them. So handling these objects is nothing but exception handling. But my basic question here is, so we have come across different objects. Now, as a programmer, you have created your own objects like student objects, you have created some kind of objects, account objects, this object, that object. Till date, we have created different objects. All objects become say exception objects. Yesterday we have seen string objects, yesterday we have seen wrapper objects, lots of objects we have created till date. Is it that all objects can I say as, in all objects in Java can I say as exception objects? Is it correct? Can I say string object is exception object? Getting my point here? I am simply saying what exceptions are objects, and handling these objects is nothing but what exception handling. That is a technical point inside this. But my question is, all objects in Java is said as what exceptions? We have come across different objects. You have created student class, you have created student objects, we have created account classes, account objects, car classes, lots of classes, lots of objects. All objects are said as exceptions then. Right? No, it's absolutely no. So just understand the scenario here. What is the importance of these objects? The importance of these objects is, these objects whichever are created for me, they are special objects which are representing a special runtime failure. What string object is representing? What student object is representing? What runtime failure a student object, account objects are representing? No, they are not representing any runtime scenarios, runtime failures. So these are the special objects which are representing you some kind of runtime failures, and they are created in special cases. These objects are created in some special cases when your program is under execution and some statements of your program cannot be executed, and then in that case situations these objects are created. They may be created automatically by the runtime, or they may be created by the programmer. I'm not talking about this creation. You can also create the objects, exception objects, absolutely fine. But the situation here, the scenario is, these are some special objects I can say which are created to represent some kind of runtime problem, right? So we have seen, if I want to put, we have come across such kind of before. We have seen like in the previous we have seen, now whenever we have started, so we have seen different types of objects like mutable objects. Mutable objects means what? Objects, they can be changed. The data of the object can be changed. They are called as mutable. While we discussed the strings, we have come across different type of objects. We are talked about what? Immutable objects. And these also one more category of objects will be having. So these objects are different from the regular objects which carries the data, which stores the data for you. No, these objects are not for storing the data. These are not for doing some kind of performing some kind of logics for you. These objects are representing some special kind of runtime failures. So these objects are so these objects, how can I differentiate them? So definitely you need to differentiate them. How can I differentiate them? Which objects I can say which are objects which represents a runtime failures, which objects are normal objects which carries the data with them and which are used for doing some kind of operations. I should have a clear differentiation between them, right? Yes or no? Right? So for this Java people has created some special hierarchy for these objects, right? So the objects which fall into this hierarchy of classes, so those objects are called as what? Exception objects, right? So the hierarchy of classes, I am giving rough picture of this hierarchy of classes, right? So because there are huge number of classes are there in this, I'm giving some only few classes from this hierarchy, right? So there are some hierarchy of classes are there. I'm just giving some few of them as I'm. It's not a different thing, guys. Object orientation. I'm keep on saying it's the heart. Nothing is there apart from object orientation. Very blindly you can learn. Right. So this hierarchy of classes are like this. The super class for all the classes, one class is there which starts this hierarchy. On top of this hierarchy of classes, there is one class. That class is called as throwable. Right. On top of this hierarchy, there is one class. That class is called as throwable. So the name itself says what? The objects which can be created and can be thrown, right? So this throwable has two different child classes here. The big hierarchy you have here, big hierarchy of classes, but the classes which falls into this hierarchy and the objects which are created for these classes, then only these objects are said as what? Exception objects. This is a super class, right? So always imagine that arrow always points towards superclass, right? Now here there are two subclasses are there for this class. The first subclass is called as exception. Exception itself is a class in Java, right? Exception, there is a class with the name exception, and one more subclass is there for this. This is the most is what? Error. So there are two different types of throwable objects which can be thrown at runtime. Two different types of objects which can be thrown at runtime. One type of objects we call as exception, the other type of objects we call as error. Right? What is the difference you have between exception and error? Both occurs at runtime only. Absolutely both occurs at runtime only. Errors and exceptions both occurs at runtime only. Then what is the difference? Why both? How they are different from each other, right? So this is a very important point. Errors are those, so right, errors are those which cannot be solved by the programmer. A programmer cannot solve these problems. They are called as what? Errors. What does it mean? What type of problems, right? So let's take, I am trying to run my program, I am trying to create my objects, I am trying to create the objects in my program, and you know that object is nothing but memory. It allocates it requires some kind of memory. If the memory is not there, if I want to create the object and there is no memory for creating the object, so how can you solve this problem? And I want to execute my program where my virtual machine is not running, it is corrupted. My Java virtual machine is corrupted. How can I solve this problem? Out of memory. So what alternative you do for this? You cannot do. You cannot write any kind of alternate for this. Absolutely no. My virtual machine is not working. Memory is not there. So such kind of serious things where a programmer cannot solve, they are called as what? Errors. Right? And some kind of runtime problems where a programmer can solve, those are called as what? Exceptions. The programmer cannot solve some kind of problems which may cause your program to stop, as out of memory, virtual machine is not working. All these cannot be solved by the programmer. Software is corrupted, right? You cannot do anything with this. And some kind of problems which occurs at runtime where the programmer can write the logic to handle these situations, like whatever we have seen in our program. Those are categorized under what? Exception, right? So this is what you have here. So again, these are classes only. Exception is a class and error is a class. They are not different thing. Exception is a class and error is also a class, right? So we'll see this hierarchy. Right? If you want to see, just as I told you, just you can find these things in the API. I'm not explaining anything new here. These are all Java API. It's always better to go with this API. I'm expecting you have downloaded it. Right? See here, the root classes for this exception hierarchy are present in lang package. Again, the same thing. The root classes for this exception are present in lang package. What is the root class here? We are talking about the throwable. This is the one I am talking about. Open this throwable, and which is, as already discussed, every Java class is a child class for what? Object class. This is also not a different. But this class is a root class for some different hierarchy. The throwable class is a super class for all errors and exceptions in the Java language. And only the objects that are instances of this class are thrown by the Java virtual machine. Not all. The objects which belong to this hierarchy of classes, only those can be thrown by the virtual machine or by the programmer. Getting me? So in this case, who is throwing these objects now for in my program? Who is throwing these objects in my program? These objects are thrown by the virtual machine. Object is created by the virtual machine and it is thrown by the virtual machine. And I am not having any logic to handle these things. Right? Not different thing. They are classes and objects, right? So you can clearly read this document and it is clearly given in this. So it has two child classes, right? One is exception, one is error. Errors are those which are a subclass of throwable that indicates serious problems which cannot be solved by the programmer. No, you cannot do virtual machine error, IO error, linkage error. No, we cannot solve these things. But there is one more category you have for this throwable, that is what a programmer can solve this. Lots of things are there here which can be solved by the programmer. Right? So what is this? The class exception and its subclasses are from throwable that indicates conditions that reasonable application might want to catch, means what? Handle. So these are the two subclasses you have for this, right? Now here, now what are exceptions? They are again different types of exceptions we have. In the exceptions we have different types of exceptions, right? Checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. We'll see most important interview question and most important interview question, checked exceptions and unchecked. So this is again categorized. These exceptions are categorized into different categories. There is one class called as runtime exception. What is this class name? Runtime exception. There is a class called as runtime exception, which is a direct child class for exception, right? So now here it has some child classes. It has some child classes, this runtime exception, right? I'm listing only few here, guys, as I'm selling. Big list is there. I'm putting some important classes in the architecture, right? So what child classes you have for this runtime exception, right? So whatever the classes up to now we have seen, null pointer exception is a child class for runtime exception. Null pointer exception, and very easy to identify these classes. Every class ends with a keyword, ends with a word called as exception, right? Arithmetic exception, arithmetic exception, right? So one more class you have, and you have lot more. What is it? Number format exception, right? And like this you have lot more. Array index, absolutely, but array index is a child class of some other exception class. This index out of bounds exception is there, and array index out of bounds exception is a child class for this, right? So like this we have hierarchy, and here also we have some classes here. So runtime exception is a direct subclass. It's simple inheritance. Remember this, guys, this is a simple inheritance. SQL exception, all inheritance, and you have interrupted exception, class not found exception, class not found exception, right? Right, so you have such child classes like this. So all are inheritance here. And where is the object class sits here? Where is the objects class sits in this hierarchy? On top of what? Throwable. And that means what? All objects are not set as what? Throwables. In simple inheritance, you need to understand the inheritance. Where is the object class sits? Here the object class sits in this hierarchy, and all objects are not set as what? Throwables. So string class, where is the string class sits in this hierarchy? String class is a direct subclass for object class. As we have discussed in this, in what? As we have discussed in inheritance, right? So animal is a superclass, and cat and dog are child classes for the animal, where dog and cat are not, both are same. So same thing here. Throwables are not strings, and strings are not throwables. Remember this. Throwables are not strings, strings are not throwables. Those strings and throwables both are objects, two different objects, right? So like this you have different objects here, and this hierarchy is not correct here. Writing this hierarchy in this, right? So this is the hierarchy of classes you have. Throwable is a superclass. The objects which are created and thrown at runtime for handling, they are called as what? Throwables. And there are two types of throwables you have. One type are called as exceptions, the other type are called as what? Errors. Right? So exceptions are those which are handled, which can be handled. These group of objects can be handled by the programmer, and this group of objects cannot be handled by the programmer. No, it's not possible to handle, right? So here again in this we have two different type of exceptions. We'll understand when the topic moves on. So these category, runtime exception and its direct child classes. Runtime exception and its direct child classes are called as unchecked exceptions. What is the meaning of unchecked exceptions? We'll see. What are these called as? Unchecked exceptions. What is the meaning of unchecked? You will understand when we discuss still more about exception handling, right? Just remember this. Later I will explain what is the meaning of unchecked exception. Runtime exception and these classes are called as unchecked exceptions. It's not a class, it's a category name, right? It's not a class. Don't take it as a class name. It is a category. Unchecked exceptions. And other classes, whatever you have here, SQL exception and this exception, throwable, these are all called as checked exceptions, right? So this is what you have here. So again, it's not different thing you have here. Classes and object, and these objects sometimes will be created by the virtual machine, because if it is defined in the Java, the object will be created by the virtual machine. If it is not defined in the Java, you need to create the objects. As a programmer, it is always possible to create the objects by you, or it can be created by the virtual machine. And handling these objects is called as what? Exception handling, right? So in my program, there are different objects are raised, and I did not handle them. That is a problem. That is the reason why Java runtime is stopped your program abnormally and asking you to handle these problems. Right? So that is what you have here, exceptions, and it's something related to exception handling. Right? So here, how can I handle this? Very simple to handle these problems here. So Java has 5 different keywords to handle them. The first keyword is try, second keyword is catch, third is finally, the fourth is throw, and the fifth is throws. These are the 5 different keywords are given for us to handle these kind of objects. These kind of objects which are created at runtime to represent some kind of runtime failure. So there are 5 keywords are given, simple 5 keywords. By using these 5 keywords, we will be handling this particular objects, right? So that is what here. That is what something about exception handling. What actually the meaning of exception? What happens when the exception occurs in your program? And what is the classes hierarchy of these exceptions and all? How they are different from other objects? There's some description about this, right? So if you have any doubts, just you think about this concept. I will be back in 2 minutes, right? Right guys, if you have any queries now you can ask related to this. Okay, fine. You are unable to get the option to download. Let me give the direct link. Okay, okay,